painting is that the most important site in Rome is sort of there, but in a hidden way. And when you look at it, this arch here that frames the composition is one of the arches of the Colosseum. So this is actually taken from Svanevelt standing underneath the Colosseum looking out. So it's a sort of wonderful kind of idea. And the way he suggests just an arch and the tumbling block in front, the huge block of rock in front of the pilgrims and the woman walking, it's also probably one of the blocks of travertine of the Colosseum that has collapsed and it's down there. As I said, Svanevelt is one of the exceptions. Svanevelt mixes with other artists. He's also then part of a very important series of commissions from the King of Spain. Now, most of these artists who painted Italian landscapes, most of these Dutch artists, did so for a Dutch audience. No one in Italy wanted scenes of Italian landscape. They would just look out of the window and were perfectly happy with that. Why pay for it? Obviously, it's people in Holland who don't have access to Italy that want these sort of landscapes. Italy, France, mostly abroad. Poussin and Claude paint for French audiences. Svanevelt, other Dutch artists paint for a Dutch audience when they go back home. Svanevelt is the exception, as I said, and the King of Spain commissions a very interesting series of very large landscapes for his new residence in Madrid, the Buen Retiro, and Svanevelt is one of the only two Dutch artists that collaborates on this. The others are Italian and French. And of course, Svanevelt is very close to Claude Lorrain, and here you see a very famous painting by Claude, French artist, and I'm just showing you that to show you what the relationship between the two is, and in a way, this idea of light and Italian landscape is very close between someone French who then spends the whole of his life in Italy and Svanevelt in Holland. Jan Both is another of these artists who's in Rome at the same time as Svanevelt, and he's the second artist who also collaborates on this Buen Retiro Spanish project. And he's really one of the leading figures of the second generation. And he also spent a few years in Rome and probably spends a lot of time with Svanevelt and the others. And again, you see here this day-to-day life near a river or a lake. It's kind of unclear what it is. But the wonderful way in which this painting is mostly all sky. It's all about the light. And of course, Holland, like England, is a particularly rainy country and very cloudy. And so sunny days like these wouldn't have been everyday material. And so the thing that really fascinates the Dutch Italianates, and I think the whole exhibition upstairs proves that the main concern about all of these artists and all of these pictures is light. And the light in them is absolutely amazing. Carole Dujardin is another great artist from this generation, and we have two pictures by him upstairs in the show. And he instead sort of focuses on animals. He seems to be particularly fascinated by animals and figures. And so here you have the white horse, which is a very, very interesting picture, in which a very run-down workhorse becomes the hero, in a way, of the picture. He actually spends a lot of time in Italy and goes twice, and his second visit is in the 1670s, and he eventually dies on his way back to Holland in 1678 in Venice. The other picture by him we have is the shoeing the ox, and it's this wonderful ironsmith shop, probably in Rome, or somewhere out in the country, where you have a man and two boys shoeing the ox, which looks very sort of grand and quite sort of calmly standing there. And then you get this wonderful effect of the forge behind him, just here. So you get the flames and the fire of the forge, and there's a blacksmith in the background working away, probably on another shoe for the ox. These would have been scenes that you would have encountered on a day-to-day life in Rome, in the center of Rome as well. I mean, a lot of cities in Italy, I mean, if you go to Naples, for example, still to this day, you see chicken in the middle of the street, in the middle of the city, and it's kind of amazing. But I think, Rome at that time was very much like this. You had a lot of animals in the middle of the city, and it was quite normal. So again, it's difficult to say that this is part of the center of the city, or it's out in the countryside. One of the most extraordinary artists of this generation is Adam Pynacker. And two of the most important pictures in the show are by him. He's a fairly rare artist, and the two Pynackers at Dulwich are very, very famous, and probably amongst the most famous pictures we have. He's very, very individual artist, very fantastic in the way he renders landscape, and plays a lot of games with perspective and focus, and plays around with that very much. And so here you get this wonderful effect of trees in the foreground, and then this sort of opening landscape to the right, with huntsmen and dogs and prey in the foreground, sort of stuck in. A lot of the time what you can see here, for example, is that what he would have done is sketch the trees and the landscape, and then he would have sort of put the figures in. I mean, this is not a scene that you have ready-made in front of you. What you do is you construct the scene in the studio from different drawings and different things. One of the interesting things about this picture as well are the leaves in the foreground here, which are indeed bright blue, and you can see them even better downstairs in the real painting. And it's not a mistake, it's simply a reminder that paintings change over time. And what we're looking at is a 300-year-old object, which of course has changed. I mean, like people, pictures age. And pigments and colours are never exactly the same. They dry over long periods of time. It can take hundreds of years for oil to be absolutely dry. And certain colours change, and certain pigments and certain specific types of colours disappear, change colour. And so think about the fact that at this point in 1650, an artist wouldn't just go to a shop and buy tubes of paint. You would have to make your own at home. And so green is made out of blue and yellow, and the yellow in this case is a fugitive colour, which means it disappears over time. It evaporates with light and the air, and so all that's left is the blue. So that's kind of an interesting thing for this picture. The other pinnacle we have is the bridge, the landscape with the bridge, which is slightly earlier from the 1650s, and again probably one of the iconic pictures of Dulwich. And what I do love about this picture, again, is the light, the sort of intense light from the background, but also the wonderful detail of the little dog on the bridge looking out very romantically towards the sun. The leading artist of the group that we called the Dutch Italianates is actually someone who never set foot in Italy, and it's Albert Cuyp, who was from Dordrecht in Holland and spent most of his life there. And we have 6 great paintings by Cuyp, which is quite a lot considering in England, and all of them are here in the show downstairs. There's a wonderful wall of Cuyp, and just to show you a few, this is one of the earliest ones from the 1640s, and it's a very small picture, and it's very, very Dutch in style. Look at the landscape, totally flat, marshes, cloudy, nothing more Dutch than this. But as he moves on, things start changing. And again, here you get the Dutch landscape. You even have windmills in the background, peasants and cows, and the light is kind of beginning to filter through.